Great, good morning everyone. Another Connect and Share for a Friday morning. This is number 61 of the sessions that we have been running for the outdoor industry. And may I kick off firstly by welcoming everyone and acknowledging our traditional custodians of the land in which we work as outdoor professionals. And may I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and hope that we learn from their knowledge of the land and adapt our offerings to our visitors by listening and adhering to some of the respect that we pay for the traditions that have been on the land before us. So, quick week in review and an update on all things outdoors. The first thing I have the pleasure to announce is our National Outdoor Education Conference precursor. And if you might remember that the National Outdoor Education Conference unfortunately has had to be postponed, that was due to happen in Lura in the late days of September this year. It is now being put back till September 2022. But we are delighted to bring you an online day, which will be the precursor to the real National Outdoor Education Conference, and that will be held on the 29th of September. The program will be released early next week, and I can tell you that every single person, as we have said before, who has booked and paid for the National Outdoor Education Conference will have access to this virtual webinar at no extra cost. So great news, and we've got a great lineup of some content that is very relevant for today, and we look forward to bringing you that very soon. Here is a rough agenda of what you can expect, and the first topic that we will be looking at is our learnings from bushfires and COVID, a very hot topic, and a great panel of specialists that have been working heavily in policy in this area as well as the industry. That will be followed by the ACARA curriculum review, and we're so pleased to have David and Janice along to help us understand a little bit more about that and the outcomes of that. But I have a big question to ask our members, and David has actually asked if he could have some questions that he can respond to by our industry. So this is great. It's literally a virtual Q&A with the CEO of ACARA. So if you have questions around the curriculum, we urge you to send them to us at info@outdoorsnswact.com.au, and we'll be certainly delivering them to him to be addressed on the precursor event. The third session will be around the OCA summit that occurred earlier this year and what's happened since. You might remember there's some working groups that are very busily working behind the scenes to look at some of those topics that we know, if we address, will make a huge change in our industry. The fourth one there is nature play and the new innovations that have come out of outdoor learning space with nature play, and we're so privileged to have Parsi as part of that, and also Amanda Lloyd, so my predecessor, will be a part of that session, and there is a great announcement in that session which I cannot tell you about. You'll have to come along and see. And then at the last session there is the OEA Awards, so the Outdoor Education Australia Awards. So for those that have nominated, that's when you get to hear if you were successful. Restriction update. Unfortunately, I have to turn the tone down a little bit and give some highlights on where we sit with COVID-19 right now. The 8 Sydney LGA areas still remain with the 5-kilometre radius lockdown. And as we know, Greater Sydney, including Blue Mountains, Illawarra and the Central Coast have the stay-at-home notices until 28th of August at this point in time. Yesterday, it was announced that Newcastle, Lake Macquarie, Maitland, Port Stephens, Singleton, Dungog, Muswellbrook and Cessnock are all now in the same predicament as Greater Sydney. So we encourage everyone to obviously abide by the rulings on this. Let's keep everyone safe, and please, if you haven't already, grab your vaccination. So where we sit with grants right now, the federal support continues. This is available now, available for applications for anyone that lives in New South Wales. Our dilemma right now is that people in ACT are not technically eligible. However, I did ring Services Australia this week and ask them the question if they could apply. They told me that it's up to the individual circumstances and they would encourage anyone that has lost hours because of work to phone through Services Australia and talk with the representatives to see if they are eligible. So even though it doesn't say ACT on the website at the moment, we ask everyone to address their own individual circumstances with the staff. We are working with the ministers to try to recognise the challenges of the ACT right now and the gaps that our guys are falling through. So yeah, we'll fill you in if we are successful in any of those efforts. The ACT operators know that this is now available. It's a small tourism operator recovery payment. There is a session at 11 o'clock today that the chamber is running, which is free for anyone that is a member of Outdoors New South Wales and ACT. And it's a question and answer exactly on this program. So if you need the link, it starts at 11. Please let me know and I will certainly try to get it to you as quickly as possible as soon as we finish this session. The VIC support, from what I understand, hasn't changed at the moment, but obviously with this now lockdown number 6, we might see a little bit of change to that. But this is what the offer is at the moment, which is no different to what we mentioned last week, which is the Hardship Fund and the Alpine Business Support Program. New South Wales, so we've got the business grants, they are open. People are starting to be paid through this program. So even if you think you're not eligible, I encourage you to look at it and get your applications in very soon. And then that will form your application, if approved, to access the Job Saver, which is up to 40% payroll. Now, I just need to clarify something because a couple of conversations with members has highlighted a misconfusion and some confusion in this space. 40% of payroll is equated to get the funds that you get from this grant, but it doesn't have to go to payroll. These funds can go to business expenses, ongoing expenses that the business incurs, things that cannot be covered by other grants. The payroll, your disaster repayments from the federal government is what pays your staff that equivalent to what was the JobKeeper last year. The micro business grants are still available as well. So that's the $1,500 per fortnight if you're non-employing and you have a turnover of up to 75,000. So that's again, New South Wales. And then there's the accommodation providers. So if you have had bookings cancel, you can apply for these one-off fees. The payroll tax deferrals and also concessions have been brought back in. The tenants and commercial retail premises protection is also in. And at the moment, Dine Discover is due to finish 31st of August. Again, we're just hoping that that may be continued into September as we come hopefully out of lockdown. The one thing that I need to make members aware is the Fair Work legislation still hasn't changed. So you might remember last year when we went through COVID, we had a Fair Work change in the fact that we could alter people's positions and their job description and what they could do at their time at work. That is currently not in place. So please be aware of this as you're talking with your staff and negotiating different duties or time that they spend on the job. Another reminder about the casual employment information statement, because again, talking to some of you, I don't think that you're up to speed on this, but if you employ casuals, it is absolutely mandatory now that they receive a casual employment information statement, and the larger organisations have to be compliant on the 27th of September this year. A Event management scholarships. This is an exciting one for regional New South Wales, which a lot of you are based in. And you can actually apply for this under a full scholarship, which means no cost to you if you live in regional New South Wales. So if it's an area you want to improve in your skill set in event management, as we come out of obviously lockdown and restrictions of COVID, it could be something to do while certainly we're in this mode. But yeah, it's a really great offer, and it's brought to you by Meetings New South Wales, which is the business arm of Destination New South Wales. Uploads, a quick one here. You all know the Uploads program, which is where we register all our incidents in the outdoors, and they have a current offer for anyone to participate in a study in relation to injuries sustained during hiking. So if you'd like to participate, you can certainly let me know, or you might remember Lauren actually presented to us some months ago now. You can certainly register your interest with that through Lauren. Our AGM, 27th of September this year, so we'll have an RSVP session sent out very soon so people can join us. But the main thing here is I want to call for applications for board members. We had the usual half rotation on our board, and unfortunately we're losing some of our board members this year. So if you're interested in joining our board, we are looking for some good skills as well in legal and governance, financial planning, strategic planning, and also marketing. So if you hold any of those skills and are committed to the outdoors, we'd love to hear from you. And don't forget our survey and reward. I got to say, as soon as we put this prize pack up, it's amazing how many people have done our survey since. So thanks to Take 3 for the C for their offer of this beautiful prize pack. And as we know, climate change is a big issue in the outdoor industry. And we ask that you can just tell us where you're up to, what your knowledge is in this space, because we hope to provide you some great tools and resources about dealing with climate change. This is the 6th of August, in case you forgot. And today we're talking about skilled worker visas and working holiday visas. And I'm so pleased that Adrian's with us today. So we'll hear from him in a minute. On the 13th of August, what can you claim when it comes down to your tax as an outdoor leader, as an outdoor person? What can you actually claim? And Joy's going to help us with that one. And then the 20th of August, we'll certainly have the single touch payroll stage 2 and all your questions answered there. The youth grant, oops, sorry, that was my fault. The youth grant is out, and we mentioned this last week, but it is certainly relevant to our industry, particularly in dealing with some of our youth in outdoor learning. So that is available till the 6th of September, in case you're interested in applying for that one. And as we said last week, the New South Wales curriculum came out for K-2 in English and Maths, so now that's up for review. If you're interested in making sure that outdoor education is part of this curriculum, now's our opportunity to get in and make our comments heard. I have the beautiful Vanessa with us today, and I gave her 2 minutes notice to come on because I saw this come across my screen, and I can see that there's a couple of people on this call that would be very relevant for this. Destination North Coast, and what they're providing is a business accelerator mentoring program. Vanessa, what's all this about? Oh, you're on mute, darling.
Laurie, thank you for the invitation to join you all this morning from Sydney. Yes, so Destination North Coast is, they have some grant funding to assist businesses in the tourism sector from Byron all the way down to Foster. You need to have the business registered in one of those local government areas, and applications are open now and closing on the 13th of August. So it's one-on-one mentoring. You are allocated a mentor that is able to support and appreciate your specific niche that you're working in. And you get, as I said, one-on-one mentoring. It's flexible hours, and it's about 7 hours worth of support, and you'll come out, or the business that applies will come out with a better understanding of their marketing and digital, their finances. They will produce a business plan. So anyone who is able to, there's still spots open, and we would really urge people to jump in and apply, even if they think that they might be interested. And if you know anyone who's interested, yeah, please let them know. Destination North Coast. Sparrowly is delivering the program, and we've had great success in Newcastle, and we're about to deliver another program for Newcastle. We've had great success in the Hawkesbury as well. You may have heard about some of the programs we've delivered and some of the businesses we've supported. So if anyone's keen, please, by all means, jump in and get that application in for us.
Wonderful. Vanessa, what's the time commitment? I know that's probably everyone's concern these days and trying to fit everything in.
The pay when you get approved, so assuming you were to start in September or October, the general pacing is once a fortnight, and it would run across about 7 sessions, 6 or 7 sessions. So assuming that you're running once a fortnight, you're looking at about 3 months. But if it doesn't work for you, if you need to take a break in December because you're super busy, or you just do not work in January, more power to you, then we do have up until, I think we've got, just let me double check we can go all the way through until April. So if you got into the program and you went, look, this sounds really great, but I really can't start until next year, then we would make that happen. Yeah, so we've gotten through until April to complete.
That's quite flexible. Yeah, awesome. Well, great offer, and certainly something that we're all needing to look on our businesses as opposed to being in our businesses at this time. So thank you. Thank you so much for coming along. And if anyone's interested, do you want to put your email in the chat there and people can get in contact with you direct?
Sure, I'll drop some details into the chat and also a link to share for applying. Spread the word. Spread the word. Time to take advantage of any support we can get.
Yeah, brilliant. That's great. Thank you so much, Vanessa, for coming along. You're welcome anytime.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Okay, I think she's just dropping out there, but we'll keep going. And I'm going to hand over now to Adrian. And again, Adrian, thank you so much for coming along today. This has been a topic of considerable conversations as we came out, well, as we entered 2020, and now as we get into 21 and look at what the future is going to hold. So, Adrian, I'm going to hand over to you, and you're from Visa Logic.
Okay, thank you very much, Laurie. Thank you for inviting me. I'm speaking from Lockdown Central in Sydney, as I think some of you are also in Lockdown Central as well. There's lockdown everywhere in New South Wales at the moment. So it's a very difficult time for everybody, and it's a difficult time particularly for people who want to come to Australia or want to stay in Australia on a visa. So I'm going to try and be as positive as I can for the attendees and emphasise the options that are available to them still in these uncertain times, and also particularly focus on employer-sponsored visas. But I'll also mention working holiday visas at the end. But I may be assuming wrongly, I don't know, maybe assuming that your members have experience with working holiday visas. But I will talk about some of the changes that have been implemented or foreshadowed by the government as a result of the COVID pandemic. Yeah, so just a bit of background on me, just very, very, very briefly. I've been in this industry for my sins for 20 years now, and I've been most of that time I was working with a Japanese recruitment company in Sydney. So a lot of my clients were Japanese corporations, or are Japanese corporations, ranging from big companies to small restaurants and hairdressers and things like that. So I've experienced the full range of kind of clients. and I was also their in-house lawyer. But now, yes, I work with now work for myself and also work with an accountant in Chatswood. So yeah, so hopefully I can bring a bit of experience to this discussion with everybody, and hopefully there'll be a chance for some questions at the end. But if anybody wants to kind of interrupt me and ask questions all the way through, that's fine too. I'm going to concentrate on what's called labour agreements, which is a sort of subset of other visas, but I thought it might be particularly interesting to your members because it's a way of accessing skilled workers whose occupation isn't on the skilled list. But anyway, I'll go through an overview and then go through the specifics as well. Okay, can you all see this? The very, very brilliantly done, not
as
PowerPoint.
your screen yet.
Sorry,
We can't see your screen yet.
you can't see the PowerPoint.
No, try sharing from the bottom again. There we go.
Better.
Gorgeous.
As you can see, it's just so graphically fantastic. Anyway, so that's just the title screen and just an overview of what we're going to cover. So overview of the visas: temporary visas, permanent visas, regional visas, which I imagine would be particularly of interest to you, other options, and then questions. So if you're an employer and you want to employ skilled people, there are quite an extensive range of options for you. And these options can be quite daunting because within each option there are subsets of options. So it's it's quite logical when you look at it, but it can be quite daunting at first. So the most popular visa for employers who really want to get someone working for up to 4 years, so it's sort of a reasonable period of time, is the 482, which is a temporary skills shortage visa. You've probably heard of that, most of you, because it's pretty, as I say, it's the most popular visa. So in my experience, 80% of employers go for this. They choose this visa, even though it can be very expensive. It sort of meets their requirements generally. A subset of the 482 and also some other visas is what's called labour agreements. With labour agreements, you can source occupations that aren't on the skilled list. So as you probably know, each visa has a list of occupations that you can choose from. And if the employee that you're looking at you don't want someone with that occupation, you can forget it. But with a labour agreement, you can, within certain boundaries, choose any occupation. Then there's the permanent visas, which in some cases you can sponsor straight away, or you can sponsor someone after they've had a temporary visa. There are regional visas. I don't know what those anyway. There's a temporary activity visa, which is a subset of this, is related particularly to COVID, and also the tourism sector. So I thought that might be of particular interest to your members. There's the training visa if you want to train somebody. There's the Global Talent Employer Sponsored Visa, GTES, which is very, very highly specialised. There's a temporary work 400 short stay visa. And then, of course, added to that, there's working holiday. Okay, so do you want me to go into a bit of detail about the 482, or does everybody know about this?
I'll ask who, actually, Sam, you're probably the one here that's going to benefit most from this discussion. Did you want us to highlight anything?
Look, I'm interested. I'm interested in all of those that you just mentioned. We're trying to get, especially over 30s, in on a whatever visa we can. Happy to train them. Would prefer more, 4 years is ideal rather than the quick sort of holiday visa. In the past, we've done, I think 417, but we're just finding it's no good for the over 30s.
Yes, that's right. Although there's some people from certain countries you can get up to 35, but anyway, that's
correct.
True. Yeah. So, all right, well, I'll go through this relatively quickly. But anyway, if there's any questions or something that's not clear, please ask. I used to be a teacher a long time ago, but you probably can't see that. But anyway, so the visa, the 482 is a 3-stage visa. There's the sponsorship, which is the company. So the company's got to be viable, financially stable, hasn't got any sort of black marks against it in terms of fair work or any other non-compliance issue. Then you have the nomination, which is the position within the company. So you've got to prove that this is a genuine position, that the company needs the person, and that they can't get an Australian to do the job. The Department of Home Affairs has got this very strong sort of policy that a company has to prove that it can't employ Australians in the position, and they're not just getting this visa to help someone get, stay in Australia. So with most of these, I've got this as the next point. Most of these visas, you've got to conduct labour market testing, which means you've got to advertise the position in a specified way for at least 2 weeks. If a person comes from certain countries under international, ITO stands for International Trade Obligations. So if the company's, the applicant, not the company, the applicant's from Japan, say, there are other, I think Taiwan, various other countries, but if they're from those countries, you don't have to bother because it's under the terms of an ITO. As 80% of my clients were Japanese or are Japanese, it's a great thing not to be exempt from that requirement. Anyway, so that's the nomination and the sponsorship. Then you have the visa applicant who needs the skills, qualifications and experience for this position, plus, unless they've got certain passports like English, Canadian and other passports of an English background, they have to prove their English language skills. And there's also character and police and health checks as well. But for the 482, you've generally got to have at least 2 years experience in a nominated occupation. So if someone's just graduated, this isn't suitable.
Okay.
The tricky thing with this too is that there's 2 occupation lists. So there's one which is 2 years or up to 2 years and one which is 4 years. So if a good example, probably doesn't apply to you guys, but a good example of how this could be tricky is a cook is on the 2-year list, whereas a chef is on the 4-year list, which doesn't seem to make much sense. But if you want to employ someone for 4 years, you've got to apply twice.
Oh.
And also, the person on the 2-year list can't apply for permanent residence subsequently, whereas the person on the 4-year list can. So that's something to bear in mind too. And I've sort of reiterated that in the last point.
Adrian, is this the visa that they're using for the Pacific Labour Scheme? Or is that a different?
That's a different visa.
Visa?
Yeah. I think I'll get to that later. So
Sorry, to determine that we've got a temporary skills shortage in the industry, did you say we needed to test the market or
yes,
show that there's no list that says this is a skill that we have shortage in Australia of?
no, not for this visa. No, the thing is, they've determined there's a shortage because otherwise the occupation wouldn't be on the list. But they also require the sponsor to show that they can't find somebody. So when the sponsor does that, they've got to show the advertising they've done. They've got to show the responses they've had and why those responses aren't suitable. So I've had sponsors who have done the advertising, and there's more than one venue you've got, or sort of outlet you've got to use, and they've got no responses at all, except for people who are totally unqualified. So when you do this, you get a lot of responses from people who are just doing it so they can get their benefits as part of the process. So it can be quite a frustrating process for people, but it's just something you've got to do. Yeah, in most cases.
Sorry, can I just go back? Did you say that there's two things that we need to do? Make sure that our industry is on the skills shortage list, and then as a sponsor prove that we're unable to fill it with an Australian person. Did I hear you correct? Sorry,
no, that's not quite, I'm not being clear. So there's all these occupations that are on the skilled occupation list for the 482. They're on the list because the Department of Home Affairs, in conjunction with other organisations, have determined that there's a shortage of these occupations in Australia. So what happens is some of these occupations over time are taken off and others are put on when they find that the labour conditions have changed. So it's just that these occupations wouldn't be on the list if there wasn't some sort of shortage.
So it doesn't exclude you.
Okay, thank you.
So it doesn't mean you've got to do anything except do the labour market testing. Yeah.
Yep, thank you for clearing that up. Appreciate it.
No worries. So I'll go on to the next slide. Why isn't it moving? Okay. Now the labour agreements is one which I thought your members might be interested in, Laurie, because it's something which they might be able to access different occupations, as I said, that aren't available elsewhere. And they're part of the 482, the 186, which is the permanent visa, and the 494, which is the regional visa. And there are 5 different types. Some of them are relevant, some of them might not be so much. So there's company specific. So your company decides they can't get anybody on the normal list and they've got a need for this person. So they might need, say, I had a person a few weeks ago who needed a truck driver who had a business in Walgett, and they needed a truck driver urgently and they couldn't get one. So they could try to do the company specific one. Then there's designated areas, which is particular areas in New South Wales, say the or whole of Australia. So there's one in the Orana region of New South Wales. They make a specific agreement, the regional body, with the department, and they allow certain, because of they've got particular labour market demands in that area, they have particular occupations. Then you've got industry specific, and one of the industries is tourism, I think. I'll just check that. I've got it comes up on the screen anyway. Project agreements, which aren't really relevant, and global talent, which allows people who have niche, highly specialised, highly skilled skills to get visas. So the whole point of this is to give employers more flexibility. So they're not limited to the skilled lists. So I thought that might be of interest to you. You guys.
And what's the time on this one, Adrian? Is that?
The time varies, but it's usually up to 4 years.
Okay.
And you can negotiate. The whole point of these is it's kind of a negotiation process. So you negotiate with the department, with somebody's help, hopefully. Negotiating with the department is not anyway. And then then that may be, depending on the labour agreement, may be part of the negotiation, whether it's what the period of time.
Yeah,
But
right.
they generally are 4 years at least. So I'll just go through these particular ones briefly. The company-specific ones available where no other form is suitable. So you've got to have the other ones have not got to be available. The occupation is not available on the normal skill list, but is not below skill level 4 in ANSCO. As you probably know, ANSCO is the kind of dictionary of all the occupations available in Australia. And unless there's special circumstances, they don't allow one below skill level 4. The skill level 4 is pretty, I shouldn't say pretty low, but it's not very, very high, let's put it that way. Need to demonstrate the position cannot be filled through the local labour market, same as everything else. Generally needs 2 years experience, plus the ANSCO requirements. So the ANSCO might say they need a diploma. That's got to be taken into account as well. Employers should not have more than 1/3 of total workforce reliant on overseas workers, and have consulted with industry groups regarding labour shortages. That is probably something that most companies would do anyway, I'd imagine. And company needs to be demonstrated to be financially viable. Well, that's something that's a given, usually. So this is an option. Any questions about that? No?
Don't think so. I suppose, ironically, I like that last point, because at the moment we're not financially viable because we haven't got the capacity that we need. So
this is actually a problem I've had. You know, I've got a few restaurants in Sydney, quite sort of high-end restaurants, and they're particularly disadvantaged because their location means they can't do takeaway very easily. So they're really.
Yeah, right. Adrian, we just got a question from Dom before he gets run over by that 4x4. Do you want to jump in there, Dom?
Hey, Laurie, thanks. And thanks, Adrian. The ANSCO skill level 4, I had an inkling, but I just looked it up and I'll just post it in the chat. But it actually specifically says it's Cert 2 or 3 level. And then it says at least a year of relevant experience may substitute for formal qualifications. Do you find that that's generally accepted? Because really that would cover most outdoor roles are going to be at skill level 4 or above.
That's right. No, I mean, because it's very nature, I haven't done many of those, but usually the higher level skill occupations, it says a diploma or bachelor degree and 4 years experience or 5 years experience, and they accept that. So I imagine they'd accept that as well. So I haven't had one example where they've made an issue about that in the past. So yeah, hopefully that wouldn't be a problem. Yeah,
so that's looking at your background, it's a pretty low gate for us to jump over, really.
Yes. That's exactly right. In this particular kind of agreement, that's right.
Okay, thanks.
Awesome.
The biggest hurdle probably is proving that you can't get anybody from the local labour market, although from the employers I've spoken to recently, it's so hard to get local workers, particularly in regional areas. It's very, very difficult.
So I'll follow up on that one, sorry, if I can. When they say local workers, what sort of region do they count? Like, I think if you could say right now, particularly, if there were workers available in Tasmania, but they're not going to come to New South Wales or Queensland or Victoria at the minute for that matter, is that good enough, or would the department say, well, they're Australians, they should get first chop?
No, it's the people you can actually practically find who will come to you. Yeah. So if they're qualified and they'll take the job, but they're not prepared to leave Tasmania, there's no point, is it? Because they're not going to do it. So yeah, it's either within the local area and a reasonable time, in a reasonable distance to actually attend and do the job. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. So this designated area DMA, I've listed there the particular regions: the whole of the Northern Territory, Goldfields. I've left that L there. Sorry. Great South Coast Victoria, Adelaide City, but only if you've got technology and innovation. Whole of South Australia regional, and Orana, New South Wales, which is Dubbo, Orange, that area, and far north Queensland. So this is a process in which you once again negotiate, and each agreement specifies the workers that you can have for that agreement. So it may be far north Queensland has different occupation lists than Northern Territory, for example. It's just a matter of looking at each separate agreement. Then there's industry specific. No, sorry, it hasn't got tourism. I'm thinking of the 408. So these are negotiated with each industry, and currently these are the only industries. Sorry about the punctuation there. Dairy, fishing, meat, minister of religion, on hire, pork, restaurant, advertising, horticulture. So they're the only industries available at the moment. But they just added horticulture a few months ago, so they might be adding more as time goes on. There's a few jokes that you could make about those industries, but I won't.
Is it? How do they get added, Adrian? Is this the work of a peak body or lobbying? Right.
Yes, it's a result of the peak body for that particular industry. Yes, negotiating with the Department of Home Affairs. Yeah.
And have they? I hear they had some added, but the earlier ones, have they changed? Like, are they reviewing them to see if it's still a need?
Yes, I think they constantly review them. So they could be, some could be taken away, and it's really strange. You've got meat and pork as separate anyway.
Yeah.
But the occupations are limited to occupations related to those industries. So, for example, with meat, it's meat worker is the only occupation, and I haven't looked at it. Minister of Religion, I imagine, would be very limited too. So, unfortunately, tourism or something related to your organisation isn't really.
Or education, which we sort of go across 4 different areas: health, as well, education.
To be honest,
fine dining and some outdoor ed centres, Laurie. Fine dining.
Fine
dining. Yeah.
Oh, totally.
Advertising, fine dining. I don't really. I mean, to be honest with you, that list doesn't really make much sense to me. But anyway, it is what it is. Then project agreements. This doesn't apply to your industry. It's just for resource or infrastructure programs, so I won't go into that. Just mention that. And how do I go back?
Probably just arrow up, maybe.
Yeah, finally, the GTES, the Global Talent Employment Scheme, that's for highly skilled workers to fill niche positions.
Mhm.
as they call it, Benefit Australia, through the transfer of skills and creation of new jobs. Once again, you've got access to additional occupations that aren't on the standard occupation list. It's available to established business and startups, and it can also lead to permanent visa and is up to 4 years. Now, if this, when they say highly skilled employees, it's a really, it's something that is kind of the best way to look at it is it's highly specialized. I'm going, there we are. Sorry. So when you look, if you look at the skilled list, there's some pretty highly specialized jobs there as it is. So it needs to be really usually related to technology or some field which is sort of kind of looking at future technology. So I don't know how relevant that would be, but you know, I'm happy to discuss that with anybody who thinks they might be interested in that aspect.
We're all highly skilled, but whether it
Yeah, of
fits.
course. I know. The Department of Home Affairs uses the phrase highly skilled as though everybody else who accesses the other programs isn't, but that's not true, obviously. So that's labour agreements. Any questions about that, the whole concept of labour agreements in general? No?
No, that's helpful. Thank you.
Have I sent anyone to sleep yet? No. I know it's not the most. Well, anyway, so then you've got some permanent visas. Now, a lot of employers, in my experience, they have someone on a 482 temporarily, and then they transition to the permanent visa. Sometimes the problem is that the employee leaves them after they get the permanent visa, but that's a side issue. So there are 3 pathways. The first is direct entry, which means you go straight into the permanent visa. So an employer, instead of employing a person temporarily, they employ them permanently straight away. And the main difference for the employer is they've got to get what's called a skills assessment, which means the employee's skills have to be assessed by a skills assessment authority, which varies according to the actual occupation. The second way is after the employee has been with the employer for 3 years, they can go through the temporary residence transition stream. And in that case, they don't need a skills assessment for obvious reasons. And the third way is the labour agreement, as we've already outlined. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward, I think. Then there's the 187, which is for people in a regional area. They can also access the 186, but the regional has certain concessions. You can only get that on a temporary residence transition. There's no direct entry anymore. And needs to be working on the 482 3 years. Then there's also the 494, which is the provisional regional visa. And that's again available through 3 pathways: employer-sponsored labour agreement. And a subsequent entrant is just somebody who is a member of the family unit who comes later. Employer needs to be on in a designated regional area. Once again, relevant skilled list. The thing about this is there's a different skilled list, which is a bit broader than the one for the non-regional. Requires a skills assessment, and once again, permanent residency is available. Temporary activity visa. This is the one I thought might be interesting to you guys as well, because they've extended this because of COVID. And this means that if you work in one of these areas, sorry, the areas come up later, then you can get, and you've got no other visa option, you can get a visa for up to 12 months because you can't basically leave Australia. And this allows them to work, could allow them to work in your organisation.
Mm.
So I'll go to that in a bit more detail later. They're also specific, this is before COVID, so also specific temporary activity, including social and cultural activities, sporting activities, which I thought might be interesting for you guys. So we're going for those as well. So temporary activity visa, as I said, the tourism or hospitality is a sector which they will allow a person to stay in Australia for up to 12 months and to work in. So tourism is seen as a, I don't know if some of you would have, your businesses would be in tourism, then they can work in that business for 12 months if they've got no other option.
Mm. Adrian, how do they, is that an ANZIC code that they go by? Like, so if the company is an ANZIC code that's tourism hospitality, like I just think of some of my guys, we could classify them as tourism and they provide hospitality, but they're an education institution, for example, or by their ANZIC code.
This is very new, so it's, from my understanding, it's not as formal as that. So
Okay.
it just, you know, I think if it's got some relationship with tourism, then it should be suitable. So there's no nomination or no, the sponsor just has to, I think, provide a letter or some sort of understanding. It's not a sponsor, the company has to provide a letter or some sort of notification that they accept this person to work for them.
Okay.
So it's kind of more, it's not as, so it's not like a sponsorship in the same sense that the other ones are.
Okay.
So yes, as I said there, you must have an employment offer from an employer who can't, once again, this whole thing, you can't find an Australian to fill the position. Okay, and then there's a training visa, and this, has any company done a training visa?
So have you looked into this one?
I think we have done this in the past, and we did a nine-month job. I guess part of the problem is we train them, we want them to stay longer. So maximum period of up to 2 years. Is that, am I reading that right?
That's correct. Yeah. Yep. When I say that, it's dependent upon the training program. So I've done this with a tech company, and they had a training period for up to 2 years, but it's not easy to get a training program in the last 2 years. And the kind of detail the department requires, but it all depends on the kind of nature of the occupation, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we would have our traineeship would go for 18 months. So that would be something for us.
Yeah. So this is
for an untrained person. Yeah.
And yeah, the key is it's got to be somebody who needs to be trained. It's not someone who's sort of already got sort of a level they don't really require training. So they've got to be at a certain point in their career that makes the training make sense. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But it's a good option for some employers. Sorry?
Can you transition? So, you know, to take Sam's point, you train them, you want them longer. Can they enter on this and then transition to another visa?
Yeah, this is a hard part. You can, but they still have. There's no kind. They still have to meet the requirements of that visa,
Right.
and depending on the nature of the. I mean, if you're using it as workplace-based training, you might be able to count some of the time that they work as part of their training as the work requirements for, say, a 402. So it kind of depends on the nature of the training itself, but it is possible.
Okay, thank you.
Next one. Oh, the future. I even selected a different font for this. Okay, so there's I mentioned working holiday visa as well in sector 2, but because this is basically the future. So there's an agricultural sector visa which has been foreshadowed for the end of the year. So it allows foreign workers to come for fruit picking and things like that. We haven't really got that much detail about this yet.
So is that the permanent solution to the Pacific scheme that they're
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Now, the biggest problem at the moment is the second one, which is travel exemptions. So if someone's overseas coming to Australia, you have to ask for travel exemption.
Yeah.
And this is not easy to get. For example, if you can prove that the position is so vital, the business will collapse if they don't have it, maybe. But I know of a person, this is a partner visa, which is completely different, obviously, but they've applied 25 times, this couple. they haven't got it. But so I think to get a travel exemption in the situation your members find themselves in, like, you would have to be somebody whose position is so vital to the company that they, without it, the company would collapse and Australians would lose their jobs. That's something that may create some sort of urgency around the travel exemption. I find in the last year or so, most people who look at visas, they are people who are here and want to stay here. And obviously, in that case, travel exemptions isn't a factor. So, if your members were looking for employees, people already here are looking for, they're desperate to stay here. I don't know if that will still be the case in 6 months' time, but that seems to be the situation now. Yeah. So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I should ask people, what's the main problem that you have as an employer? Finding workers.
Finding staff. Well, I mean, we can find. I've got qualified staff who want to work with us, but it's finding a visa that works. Probably paying enough to qualify. I think some of these visas have a salary cap, that a minimum salary that's above our industry standard, which is difficult.
You've got to pay market rates too, which can vary considerably. Can be a problem.
Okay, market rates across industry. That's okay. I think it's difficult when there's when we've got to pay 6 digits for a particular. It's well above market rates. It's complex.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to pay above market rates.
Okay.
So there's a minimum threshold, and then if the market rate's above that, you should pay the market rate. Or if you've got an Australian doing the same job, you should pay whatever you're paying an Australian. But
okay.
Yeah. So as you probably know, salaries haven't changed much in the last 2 or 3 years. So, but I mean, with these labour agreements, there is some flexibility with some of them possible. So, I mean, in my opinion, the solution to the main problem is they're usually, depending on the circumstances, there usually is a visa solution. If you're creative enough, and by creative enough, I mean often the labour agreements come into play, or now that if you just want some of 12 months, the 408 pandemic visa, as they call it, may be an option too. Working holiday, as I said, they've created more flexibility with the working holiday program. Age 35, if you're from, I think it's Ireland, Canada, and France, I think. And they're going to extend that to the UK probably as a result of the free trade agreement that's recently been signed. And working in remote areas can count for the third working holiday visa.
Yeah.
So working holiday visa is a solution for depending on what the nature of your problem, but it's not really a long-term solution because of the nature of the visa itself.
Yeah. And as Sam said, it's challenging when you're training these people up in your processes, you're keeping them for the time that you need them to get that. Conscious of time, because I know we try to keep.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. This is a great conversation. I'm sure it's very helpful for all those watching as well as listening.
It is.
Great, Sam. I know I've had a couple of questions around, continuing sponsorship at this time in the COVID. Adrian, would you be open if I shared some of those questions I've had from industry that couldn't make it today direct to you, and perhaps you had that conversation with the members? That would be amazing. Sam, is there anything else you wanted to ask before we wrap up?
No, I think especially if this is recorded, that gives us enough to go and do a bit more research into each of those. So that's just what I was after. Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. And anyone else on the call, please jump in if you've got any other queries. Michelle, I'm not sure about your business, Damon, if it applies. But I just wanted to reiterate that I spoke with Alex Hawke's office yesterday in just, the situation right now. Needless to say, visas are being approved at the moment. Although probably time delays in that, but just to reiterate, visas are being approved. It's not stopped, and certainly, as Adrian highlighted, our issue is around travel restrictions and the quarantining, of course. So none of what is in place for normal travellers is being excluded, but certainly I take your point, Adrian. I think we've got to certainly have our voice at the table with the department and get some understanding of what challenges we have as an industry.
And the department is, I know they're aware of all these problems, and it's just a very difficult, as I said, a very difficult time for everybody. But I think as I said, to emphasise the positive, there are solutions for a lot of these problems, and it's just a matter of looking, trying to look creatively at these.
Okay, outside the square. Dave, you had a question.
Not so much a question as a statement, I guess. And when we talk about the pay and market rates, that sort of emphasises again that how critical it is to sort out our pay and conditions, across our industry, instead of being all over the place, so that we can access some of this where a higher expectation of payment is required.
Yeah, no, very valid. Adrian, for your information, part of our summit discussions from a federal level, we have a working group on pay and conditions, because we don't actually have an award in our sector. We have 7. And it depends on the organisation as to where it sits. So yeah, it's a bit of a challenge. But anyway, I will wrap up, and thank you again, Adrian, for your time. Really, really do appreciate it. And hopefully, if anyone has any more questions, I urge you to to get in touch with Adrian. And as one of our visa agents, he's equipped, ready and willing to help. So thank you
My
again.
contact details are there, but don't bother visiting the office.
Yeah, no one's there. Okay, great. All right, everyone, have a fabulous weekend, fabulous week ahead. We'll see you next Friday at 10 a.m. But if you wanted to join us for happy hour, 4 o'clock this afternoon, link is on our Facebook page, and we can have a cheers to the end of another interesting week. Thanks, everyone. Have a great
Thanks for organising.
pleasure.
Thanks, Laurie.
Thanks,